And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is The Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Let's start out as we speak right now. There are nurses, healthcare, nursing home workers, healthcare advocates on the steps of our state capitol here in Pennsylvania as part of National Nursing Home Day of Action. They have lit over 3,400 tea lights to represent the men and women who lost their lives to COVID-19 in Pennsylvania's nursing homes. This is one of those moments where it's kind of a Mother Jones moment, where we mourn the dead, but we commit to fight like hell for the living. To me, it's one of those very simple moments, because the number of lives that have been lost needlessly through bad decisions from the top all the way down have to be rectified. And that's what elections are about. Again, I go back to the guy at the top, bungled this from the start, and here we are. Now you have all these people. What is it? Almost over somewhere around 119,000, closing in on 120,000 dead so far. Here in a couple of short months. And I fully expect another boomerang. I fully expect, another spike. But today is the National Nursing Home Day of Action. And it's one of these things where we need to protect our elderly. And I know you've got the conservatives out there who are saying, no, screw it. Don't worry about those old people. They lived decent lives. Got to have our economy. We need to make profit. Yeah. Also, according to the National Nurses Union, there have been at least 939 fatalities among healthcare workers across the country. And this is, again, another one of these. And it's not just nurses. It's not just doctors. Also EMTs, paramedics, medical technicians, the people who are cleaning the hospitals. Everyone who works in a hospital is at risk. And the thing that gets me is, you go out into these stores and, we have kind of opened up a little bit in our household. Today we went to the home hardware store. We went to the, Home Depot, Lowe's, one of those. And virtually no one was wearing their masks properly. About half the people were, maybe a little bit more than half. But of the people who were, more than half of them had it down under their nose. A lot of them just had it around their neck. One guy was actually protecting his chin. So I don't know about that, but at that point, why bother? Why bring it at all? And the thing is, you had California Governor Newsom today come out and say again, ordered all Californians that they must wear masks and face coverings when in public or high-risk settings, when they're shopping, when they're taking public transit, seeking medical care, that kind of stuff. He got to come out and say this. Also, Governor Wolf here in Pennsylvania again put out another statement today saying the same thing. That it's critical if we're going to stop COVID-19 spread. It's critical that you wear the masks in any business in all of the counties of the state, whether it's yellow or green. You got to wear the mask. It's pretty simple. I don't know how much easier you can get. Now you got the people who are, I'm more manly than that. I'm not going to do it. All right. Or the Trump supporters who think it's a big hoax. Now, oddly enough, you've got Donald Trump himself, who sees mask wearing in a much different light than everybody else. It's an affront to him. Evidently, he told the Wall Street Journal that he believes that people might be wearing the face masks not to prevent the spread of coronavirus, not to protect themselves, not to show concern for others. No. But as a way to signal disapproval of him. That's exactly the reason that I put that rag over my face, the mask over my face, and have a hard time breathing. And the good thing about it is I smell my own breath and immediately put in a mint. And I guess when this is over, we might be a better breath society. I don't know. But yeah, it's all about him. Now, for me, the reality is I wear the mask out of courtesy to others. I want to make sure that like I said yesterday, uh, you know, my concern for others, I wear the mask to protect others because who knows? I may be symptomatic and asymptomatic and not know I have it, and a lot of other people may too. So by just wearing the thing in public and where you have to go, just shows a bit of courtesy, but a bit of concern for others. And that's the thing about our society right now. We've become so self-centered, and well, we've got the most narcissistic human being probably ever leading our country, so it's not surprising. But just that bit of courtesy, just that bit of I don't want you to get sick, and I hope you don't want me to get sick, and I hope together we beat this thing. It just seems, well, it doesn't seem all that hard, but I guess we're in very bizarre times. Anyway, today I woke up to what I expected, because yesterday John Bolton's book, got given to the New York Times and a couple of other places, and it's out there now. The Trump administration and the Department of Justice have gone after trying to get a temporary restraining order against its release next Tuesday. I'm not going to buy it anyway. If someone wants to send me a copy, I'm more than happy to read it. I am not going to give John Bolton a dime. I would love to see the New York Times print it. I would buy it from them. But I woke up to Trump's Twitter tantrum, as we all did, over the book. And I got to tell you, I think it's the first time in the 5 years that Trump has been, running for president, ultimately, won the Electoral College in 2016 and throughout his tenure. I think this is the first time that Obama hasn't occupied every inch of his brain. I think Bolton now is front and center because, look, at the end of the day, Bolton told the truth. He said this guy is not fit to be president. This guy did all of the things that he's been accused of. I blame the Democrats of impeachment malpractice for not going after all the crimes of this administration. But anyway, Trump tweeted out that, the whole thing, it's all lies, it's all fake stories, and it's all lies, all bad. And what other defense has he got? Because he didn't read it, clearly. His NSA did, though. And they cleared it, so I don't see much of a chance for the restraining order, unless as we talked about yesterday, he ends up getting a very pro-Trump justice, pro-Trump judge. I'll get it out eventually. Maybe then, I don't know, maybe. But judging from what we're seeing coming out of the Supreme Court, maybe some of the judges don't see their appointment in the same light that Donald Trump does, because he's been taking a beating in the Supreme Court this week, and today no different. Another SCOTUS defeat as the Supreme Court 5-4 decision ruled that what he did with DACA was unconstitutional. Now, they did not. And this is the important part of this. And this is what I said from the beginning. Obama signed the executive order that created DACA, and an executive order, and you can always undo an executive order. You have to go through a process. There are rules in place. And I know that, he's a different kind of politician, and he's a no-nonsense guy, and he's just a businessman. But he's surrounded by people who understand that you have to do things the right way. And the thing is, it wouldn't have taken him long to do it the right way. But he said, no, I'm going to do it my way. And we're just going to executive, we're going to end it. Well, the Supreme Court ruled that was unconstitutional. They disagreed with how Trump shut the program down. And now here it's going to come back to what it should have been from the beginning. This should have been something that legislatively was hammered out. This should have been something that we absolutely have to deal with. We have so many problems to deal with. And yet we have no leadership, none whatsoever. And that's trouble. What we do have, are, judging by what happened today with Facebook, we've got people running Trump's campaign, maybe Trump himself, who are looking to the good old days of the fascist Nazis as their playbook, because Facebook actually removed a Trump ad today over what they claimed appeared to be a Nazi symbol, a Nazi hate symbol. The Trump campaign had an ad that contained an inverted red triangle, similar to the ones used by the Nazis to label the opponents, such as those commies and the gays. Don't forget that. Facebook said it violated their policy against organized hate. They said, we don't allow symbols that represent hateful organizations or hateful ideologies unless they're put up with context or condemnation. The Facebook spokesman went on to say, that's the way we saw this case with this ad, and anywhere that symbol is used, we would take the same action. And I got to tell you, I looked at the triangle and I'm going, why would you use this? No, they're using it because they claim this is Antifa's official. This is their official logo. And I got to remind people, Antifa isn't really an organization. They don't have members. There's not a dues structure. There's no headquarters in D.C. They don't have a uniform. There's none of that. There are people who are against fascism. There are people who are against police brutality. There are people who are against white supremacy. They're against racism. All of these people who are against what everything Donald Trump stands for. They're just people. I would like to find out where you get a card. I mean, I don't think there are any Antifa card carriers around. If there are, I'd love to hear it. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. But this is their whipping boy. And it harkens me back to the days of when the Republicans were going after Acorn. Acorn had the audacity to help poor people file their taxes, help them register to vote, help them navigate government systems. And they happened to be funded in part by organized labor, which it was a double hate for the right wing. And they ginned up a voter scheme that ended up taking Acorn down. And, the story goes back, if you really dig into it, Acorn was paying people to go out and register voters. They paid them, by the day, and people were coming back with either legitimate voter registrations, or you had some people who, just opened up a phone book and started writing people's names down. And Acorn went to the Board of Elections and said, hey, these are the ones we think are good. These are ones you should probably really check into, but we have to turn them in because by law, when someone puts a name on something, it has to be turned in. And they reported the ones that they believed were fraudulent. The fraud was actually committed against them, not by them. But that, the right-wing echo chamber didn't want to hear that. This was an opportunity to take them down. And this is another one of those moments where, like a rabid dog, they've got their teeth into something. The problem with this is there's no there. So it's again another one of those moments where you go, they need something. And they really do, because if you saw today's Fox News poll, the Fox News poll has Biden up 50-38, a 12-point lead. The mass of his support comes from black voters, 79% over Trump. People under 30, 37% Biden over Trump. Suburban areas, 22% Biden over Trump. 19% more women support Biden than Trump. And, voters 65 plus, 10% more for Biden than Trump. So Trump's he's seeing the cards. The campaign is seeing the thrashing that could come. And, well, they're ginning up the fear and the hatred. Yeah. Well, what do you expect? It's all they've got. They've got no legislative record. They've got no accomplishments. The economy's tanking. People are dying. There's chaos in the streets, and we've got, well, our narcissist in chief twiddling out nonsense. I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the DACA decision, what that means, and where we go from here. Quick break right back after this. Stick around.
There's nothing more American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On the Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1935. That was the day more than 1,000 locked-out dock workers battled police forces in Vancouver, British Columbia, in the Battle of Ballantine Pier. The dispute began weeks earlier when the Shipping Federation locked out dock workers at Powell River using scabs to unload and load cargo. Shipping magnates feared communist leadership had taken over the company unions they established in the 1920s. Workers at other ports in British Columbia now refused to handle Powell River cargo and were also locked out. Hot cargoing was the main issue, but dockers also demanded higher wages, union recognition, and fair dispatching. The previous year's West Coast waterfront strike had put dock workers everywhere in a fighting mood. In Vancouver, dockers ousted management lackeys from their union and voted in a radical leadership during a recent election. Shipping bosses, local politicians, and businessmen all cried Bolshevik menace. They formed a citizens' league and prepared for battle. And on this day, striking dockers marched to Ballantine Pier, where they had been denied the right to picket. They were determined to stop the scabbing and intended to confront the scabs directly. Led by World War I veteran Mickey O'Rourke, dockers were abruptly stopped at the pier entrance by Vancouver police. Immediately, they were beaten and tear-gassed by club-wielding police and despised specials. Soon, British Columbia Provincial Police and Royal Canadian Mounted Police emerged to join in on the assault. The fighting continued for 3 hours. Police horses trampled many as they tried to escape. Scores were hospitalized and arrested. The strike dragged on for months and ended in defeat. But dockers would win the war through 10 years of hard, dedicated organizing that culminated with an ILWU charter in 1945.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So while I woke up to Donald Trump's Twitter tantrum about John Bolton, still I think my favorite tweet today was, at least the one I saw, do you get the impression that the Supreme Court doesn't like me? And I had to respond to Donald Trump by saying, don't you get the impression, don't you understand none of us like you? I mean, come on. It's kind of an interesting tweet. Anyway, he also went on to tweet out a couple of other things. One that I found interesting, he's going to issue a new list of conservative Supreme Court justice nominees by September 1st, because this is going to be his campaign. This is going to be his campaign election strategy. Beat up on the Supreme Court that he put in place. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on today's defeat for the Trump administration. I've asked Hassan Ahmad to come talk with us. He's an immigration attorney and advocate. Hassan, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, thanks so much for reaching out and having me, Rick.
So, walk me through this. What was the what was the decision? I know it was a 5-4. John Roberts with the 4 sane justices. What did this decide?
Well, basically that the administration screwed up. They tried to revoke DACA, and as I've been saying since the initial revocation of DACA in September 2017, the only thing illegal about DACA is the way this administration tried to revoke it. I think it is important to state, to not overstate what the decision, this Supreme Court decision today was. It was not a ruling that DACA was lawful or constitutional. The limited issue was just that if the administration wanted to revoke it, they could have done it, but they didn't do it the right way.
Right.
And as you were just saying, Rick, and I think you're absolutely right, there's a process that we have to follow. We have separation of powers in this country, and we have procedures and rules. we have law, and administrative agencies, as extensions or part of the executive branch, are not free to simply rule by executive fiat. And that was one of my big takeaways from this decision. You know, the anti-immigrant right has been hounding Obama for being this emperor who just did an end run around Congress and tried to rule by executive fiat by passing DACA in 2012. That's exactly what this administration did in trying to revoke it. So who's got egg on their face now?
Right. And look, I think I had you on back at that point, and we were talking about that there's a right and a wrong way to go about this, and they chose the wrong way. Now, do you see them going back after and doing this again, or do you see this being now they're going to use it as an election issue?
I think it's certainly possible. I mean, they are the executive branch, and there is a way to do it and to revoke DACA. Whether they'll actually do it or not this close to the November election, or whether they'll try to threaten to use it and use it as a bargaining chip, all of that really depends on how they want to play their cards.
Right.
But bottom line is that the fact that they were able to do this in such a blatantly, maliciously incompetent manner, right, shows you that they're not really implemented. They're not like what they're driven by is ideology. They're not driven by respect for the Constitution. They're not driven by a concern for protecting American jobs or the economy or national security or any of that stated justification. What they're interested in is keeping America white again.
Well, and robbing us at every turn. But maliciously incompetent
Right.
is really the title of this administration. I mean, at
It
every
really is.
turn, they've been incompetent, but at every turn, they've also, in my view, they've lined their own pockets.
Right. I mean, we saw it with the Muslim ban. It started in January of 2017. I was at the airport when I saw that first chaotic, rollout of the ban, and that one swiftly was struck down, and version 2.0 was struck down, and they were able to get some mileage and get the third version of it, passed, but it took them a year and a half or almost 2 years to get that done. It's the same thing with TPS designation. There's a number of countries, designated for temporary protected status: El Salvador, Honduras, Haiti. Where countries go through upheavals or natural or man-made disasters, and people, nationals of those countries, are able to remain here temporarily under this TPS status. And they've been trying to, de-designate countries off the TPS list as well, and they can't seem to shake the allegations of racism and discriminatory animus at every stage. They've screwed up every single time.
And there's part of me that goes, maybe that's a blessing in disguise, the fact that they are so incompetent, that if they were smarter about, if Trump was smarter about how he would go about this and not have to tweet everything that he does and like a bull in a china shop, that maybe some of this horrible stuff would stick.
It really would, and it's the saving grace. I mean, attorneys like me and other advocates have been, saying this since the very beginning, since it became painfully clear about this common thread of malicious incompetence. We've been able to slow their roll as a result of it. I mean, I can talk to you about nitty-gritty immigration policies that are just coming out rapid fire. It's almost like they're trying to get as much stuff put out before November as they possibly can.
Yeah. Because I look at this, and again, as I've said from the beginning, I fear Mike Pence a little more than I do Trump. Trump's incompetent. He's narcissistic. He's all these things, but at least he's obvious. My fear, you get somebody sneaky like Pence, who knows how the system works and would put people into place who would go and do these things under the dark of night. That's why I fear him.
Absolutely co-signed.
So let me ask you the other side of this, because now that this has happened, like you said, they can still go. This didn't say that this was constitutional or any of that. This now falls, I think, on the Democrats to come forth with a plan, and ultimately Republicans to come around to pass some law. No.
Yeah, I mean, it's far overdue. I mean, the DREAM Act has been introduced, starting with Senator Durbin back in 2001. and it has yet to pass. I mean, this is just a tiny, portion of the greater need for immigration reform that we so badly need. And if we can't even get it done for those who were brought here through no fault of their own, right? To give them some sort of path to attaining permanent lawful status. DACA has been and is and always will be nothing more than a Band-Aid treatment.
Right.
It's thin ice, and we all have known that, and my clients know that, and the advocates know that. We absolutely need a permanent solution, but by holding that carrot of a permanent solution, Trump is likely to come out and say, well, if you do this, then I won't rescind it. I won't rescind it again. I know what I'm doing this time. I'll get it done, but you need to come and start imposing all these he's controlling the narrative, and I have a real problem with that as an advocate, because I know where his policies are coming from. I've talked about this before, about the anti-immigrant movement, my lawsuit to unseal the papers of John Tanton, who's the founder of this anti-immigrant movement. He was a white nationalist. He was a eugenicist. He believed white people were genetically superior. That's what these policies are rooted in. And those are the people, that movement, those groups are the ones that are advising Trump and Miller. They're the ones giving them the tools to roll out all these noxious policies day after day. So, sitting down at that table and negotiating with those people, no, I'm sorry. We need to do better. We need to take control of that narrative. We need to understand that dreamers are aspiring Americans, and we owe it to them to make sure that a meaningful path to citizenship is given to them.
Right, and overwhelmingly,
some of these dreamers are on the front lines. Yeah, go ahead.
Right, I mean, overwhelmingly, the polls show that Americans are in favor of the DACA, of the dreamers staying, because after all, I mean, like you said, they were brought here through no fault of their own, and the majority went through our schools, so we've invested in their education and their ability to help the country. It just makes common sense to me.
Some of them are on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic response. They're the ones in the hospitals. They're the ones that are nurses and some doctors and healthcare professionals. They are. What would we rather spend money on? Why do we want to try to spend money on detaining and deporting them, right? When we could be welcoming them and being better off as a country with their investment.
Yeah, I think back to 2017 when this happened, I remember interviewing a young woman who said, look, I've been here my whole life. This is all I know. You're going to send me back to a country that I've never been to. And that stuck with me.
Yeah, I mean, paperwork is one thing, but these people are American in every sense of the word. They're American in every other sense of the word.
Right.
And, I've had the privilege of meeting with many of them and representing them and advocating for them in my years as an immigration attorney. And it's simply the right thing to do, to welcome them and give them the full benefits of the citizenship that they have already proven.
I'm with you. So last line of questioning I've got for you, because, immigration is a huge divisive issue in this country. And, obviously this is going to now be something that is front and center come November. What do you want to see Democrats pursuing going forward?
The main thing that I want to see is to take, and I know this is a huge ask, it's a tall order, but we need to take control of that narrative again. I am tired, I am sick of the narrative of immigration, the connection with criminality and law-breakingness and non-law abidingness and looting and whatnot, job stealers or economic danger, national security threat. I'm tired of all these linkages. Every single time somebody comes with some sort of empowering bill or empowering message, there's the right that comes back, and they come back and they say, "Oh, how do we know who these people are? We need to vet them, and they're lawbreakers, and we have to have respect for the law, et cetera, et cetera." And the same exact arguments that were used to defend denial of women's suffrage and segregation and all of these other things that we look back on now with horror in our own history. And we're doing it again. And if we don't take control of that narrative and start painting a picture of what a welcoming America should look like. That's the main thing that I want to see. On the nitty-gritty side, yes, absolutely. We need to show support for bills like H.R. 6, the American Dream and Promise Act. Let's get the current version. Let's fix this problem. And it's not just the DACA holders, by the way. It's dreamers writ large, many of whom are invisible. I call them the invisible dreamers. They are ones who perhaps didn't fall within the categories of set by DACA back in June of 2012. There are other people, for example, children of visa holders who have aged out and have no way of being able to stay here, who oddly enough would have been better off if they had been out of status. You know, they kept their status, non-immigrant status, their valid visa status, aged out, and are now desperate to try to find some way to remain in the country.
Right.
Had they been out of status, they would have qualified. They would have qualified for DACA. So I mean, these are huge problems that we have with our system. That it just it doesn't work for everybody. So obviously these are larger problems, but we can start at the very minimum, at the very least, by passing law such as the Dream Act or Dream Promise Act of 2019. Let's at least get this part fixed.
My only hope is, come January of next year, because personally, I see nothing coming out of the Republican Party to help move this forward. Or am I wrong?
No, I mean, I think that while there may be some bipartisan support, hushed bipartisan support anyway, for helping Dreamers out, I'm also concerned that even if that does come, that's going to exhaust all the political capital, and then we won't have anything more to push forward. I mean, keep in mind, Dreamers writ large are still only 10% of the undocumented population. And why do we have such a huge undocumented population? Because our immigration laws have created it. They have given people no choice, no way, no option, no line to wait in to fix their status. So 90% of the undocumented population, all of those problems could be fixed with the stroke of a pen if we only had the political will to do so.
And that's it. If we only had the leadership and the statesmen
right.
and women to move something forward. Hassan, I appreciate the time. As always, thank you for keeping us up on this.
Anytime, Rick, and thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the work that you do.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much. Hassan Ahmad, immigration attorney and advocate. And look, at the end of the day, it doesn't seem all that difficult to me, does it? Not at all. I'll take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1918. That was the day that the St. Paul Federation of Women Teachers, Local 28, received their charter from the American Federation of Teachers. That next February, the Minnesota Women's Union was joined by the St. Paul Federation of Men Teachers, Local 42. Organizing separate locals by gender was common at the time. It was not until 1957 that the teachers united together into one local. One of the founding members of the Women's Local was Mary McGuff. Mary had been a teacher since 1903. She was still an active participant in the union in 1946 when the Women Teachers Local 28 led the first organized teachers' strike in United States history. At the time, the idea of a teachers' strike was practically unheard of. In fact, strikes by public sector workers were explicitly forbidden and illegal. Despite this, 90% of the teachers voted to walk out on strike. The core issues of the strike were improving education, including a demand for smaller class sizes and improving the crumbling infrastructure of the city's public school system. The men's local joined the women on the picket line, but it was the women who organized the action. Mary McGuff was nearly 60 years old at the time. During the 6-week strike, Mary took to the radio. Her voice shared the story of the strike with the public. One striker remembered that Mary was able to cut politicians to threads, but did it in a very ladylike fashion. Finally, the strike ended in victory for the teachers. In 1969, the union established the Mary McGuff Award, which honors teachers for the advancement of education in the St. Paul schools. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So again, another one of those moments that Donald Trump just, I don't think he runs out of ways to amaze, but evidently he claims he did something good. He said, I did something good. He's talking about Juneteenth. He says, I made it famous. I made Juneteenth very famous. It's actually an important event, he says. It's an important time, but nobody had heard of it. Very few people had heard of it. Actually, a young African-American Secret Service agent knew what it was. He says, I had political people who had no idea. And you go, I'm actually not surprised by that. When you're surrounded by Stephen Miller types, I am not remotely surprised. But it just, that's our guy. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on what we're seeing in the streets across the nation and maybe how we stop young black men from being murdered in our streets. I've asked Pennsylvania State Senator Art Haywood to come talk with us. Art, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you, Rick. Glad to be on again.
It's been too long. I got to get you back more often. But let's start with the Juneteenth thing. Donald did something good. He made it famous.
Yeah, so I think the president claims anything that he learns, he's the first one to have become aware of it. And so I'm sure that it is new to him and probably to many of his followers. But there's been a long effort to make Juneteenth a holiday here in Pennsylvania that was made successful last year after many years of effort. And glad to see.
Yeah.
Governor Wolf declared it a holiday for state workers, and I know some other local governments have done the same. And National Freedom Day is here to stay.
It's actually been a law in Texas, holiday in Texas since 1980, and I guess it goes back to 1866, right?
It does, and I think that it's important that there is a recognition of the end of enslavement as a holiday, as a significant moment in the history of the nation. We have not had any kind of holiday really recognizing it. I've shared with people that it was April the 9th when General Lee surrendered. Took some time to get that message all the way over to Texas. And I'm so glad the folks in Texas created the momentum so there could be a national holiday. But there's nothing new about it. But I would say this, any child learns something new. I think that's where we are with the president.
There you go, man. That is, hey, even at 74 years old, our man baby learned something, and there you go. But here's the thing, you look at what's going on, the chaos in our streets. You look at the protests going on, and this movie we've seen too many times. Art, we've seen too many of these videos of young men being murdered needlessly by police, and no accountability. And I think this time, I'm hoping this time's different. I'm hoping this time, people say enough is enough. And I know that you've got a piece of legislation that you're moving on, Senate Bill 611, to create a special prosecutor legislation. Tell me about it.
Sure. So since 2015, I've had this legislation. I introduced it after the killing of Michael Brown and Eric Garner. At that time, people were very troubled that the prosecutors in those counties were not prosecuting the police officers that had done the killing. And so one of the big recommendations was to have an independent investigation and prosecution and put it at the level of the Attorney General, who was separate from each of these county district attorneys. So this is a legislation, again, I introduced in 2015 because of the mass protests. and only because of the mass protests. This legislation, this approach is being considered again. So I got to give a lot of credit to the protesters for bringing these issues of police accountability to the forefront. Now, I would say, Rick, that the prospects for this legislation are still very uncertain. We had 2 days of hearings in the state Senate, and today was the most troubling of the two.
Right.
We had law enforcement consistently saying that they were doing training and learning how to deal with implicit bias.
That's great. No, that's great. I mean, it's great that they're doing that. But I'm sorry, accountability is should be the minimum. We give them so much power and so much authority that they should be, we've given them so much that we should hold them to a higher standard than everyone else. And the training and all that's great. I'm all in favor of it. Give everything they need. But at the end of the day, when you shoot a guy in the back who's running away from you, I'm not there with you.
Yeah, it's very challenging. And right after the police panel talked about all that they're doing, there was another panel of public defenders and district attorneys, mostly African American and Latino, and they all seriously complained about the mistreatment by law enforcement, not just at the point of the police officers, but all throughout the criminal justice system. And it was like there were two groups of people who never were in the same geography. One, we're doing everything we can and it's going good. And then the African American, the black and brown folks saying it's oppressive and we can't get away from it. So we got a long way to go, Rick, to get these two sides, particularly law enforcement, to really hear what black and brown people are experiencing.
Now, the president came out with an executive order. I don't know if you've looked at it, but his big idea is that we need to have a database. I guess it's voluntary for departments to issue to put into this database any complaints and any problems that policemen have, so that they can't go jumping from one department to another, and maybe there's some transparency. I thought my personal thought of the executive order very extraordinarily weak, but I'm curious yours.
Well, certainly it does not apply to the over 1,000 police departments in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, because the executive orders don't apply to anything other than the national government. And having it voluntary is a complete waste of time. It's just like issuing some guidance. There is some legislation, though, in Pennsylvania that would require police departments to share information about cops. And it could be very significant. Antoine Rose in Pittsburgh was killed by a police officer who had a very bad record. He was let go from one department. Then he went over to the new department. They did not know about his record. I believe if the police department had known about his record, he probably would not have been hired, and Antoine Rose would be alive today. So I do think that sharing these records on a mandatory basis could be helpful. That generates a little more what you're talking about of accountability. Accountability's got to be the other side of training, which is, again, why we have the independent investigation of the shootings. The public trust has been decimated. We do not trust the police officers, and having an independent investigation, I think, goes a long way in establishing more trust.
Yeah. What do you say to the people who say that, look, being a policeman's a tough job. There's a lot of criminals out there. They've just got to protect themselves, and sometimes mistakes happen.
And I'm certain that is the case. Mistakes do happen. What the challenge is most dramatically, at least in the killing cases, is that the mistakes are lethal. And this is one of the greatest challenges with the receipt of law enforcement. Yes, a mistake can be made, but a lethal mistake is even more challenging. The second piece to it is, unfortunately, in our nation, we have a pattern. It's not just that it was George Floyd or Michael Brown or Eric Garner or Philando Castile or Breonna Taylor Aubrey. I mean, there's a long list of names. We have a pattern that's established. And so we get beyond we made a mistake when the pattern is so deep. The third thing that was really shared today that I think was moving and very true, black and brown people are intimidated by the police even if they are not killed. My son was stopped by a police officer walking from his job to home. My brother-in-law had a police officer put a gun to his head. So the intimidation is present even without, or I would say even in addition to the killing. So I believe that the challenge before us is far more than individual incidents of misconduct.
Right. So what do you say? Because I'd always believed that you go back to the crime bill in the 90s and the call for 100,000 more police on the streets, and they targeted them to high poverty areas that had higher crime rates. How much of this stems out of that focus that we got to put the cops where they are, and we've got to justify them by doing things, and they've got to enforce every infraction, and that this is just a manifestation of oversaturating the number of policemen in high poverty areas.
That's a significant part of it, Rick. One of the things we heard yesterday from the ACLU is that, one, the number of crimes that we have created in the last 15 years, we've almost tripled the number of crimes. Not that people are doing anything significantly different that could not be arrested 15 years ago. So we are putting a lot more criminalization in the system. Second, you're right. Police departments were rewarded for hiring more police officers. They would get grants to bring more policing in, and the policing went into the black and brown areas. And we know that there's been disproportionate arrests on marijuana, more African Americans, on coke and cocaine, more African Americans, on minor drug offenses,
right,
more African Americans. Even policing in schools, they're pulling black children into the criminal justice system as teenagers, even before. So the over-policing is a real problem, and I think this is part of where the defund the police movement comes in.
So are you in favor of that?
I am not in favor of eliminating or abolishing all police, but I do believe that we can reallocate resources towards social services so that police officers are responding to law enforcement issues, not social service issues. I've talked to police officers who say that they're being asked to do work that they haven't been trained to do, that really is for a mental health counselor. And so I think we bring policing back into the lane of law enforcement, out of the lane of dealing with all kinds of social problems. That'll be good for the police as well as for the nation.
Right.
I would say this. This is one of the things I realized in my first couple of years in public office. Many of the social problems that we decided we were not going to pay to fix end up at the hands of police officers.
Yep.
Last year we defunded general assistance, which is only $200 a month for folks. Now those people don't have $200. It becomes a policing issue. They don't go away, and so individuals have to try to make ends meet another way. So now the police have to deal with the fact that we've made all these people broke. So I think if we can put our money into the opportunity system, generating opportunity, I think we'll have significant success. And I think the police officers, many of them, will be very happy that their job is now limited to law enforcement.
No, you're absolutely right. I remember, right when they closed the state hospitals here in Pennsylvania, Governor Rendell was in office. I had said that this was going to be a problem for the police departments because when you throw these people out of the state hospitals who have mental illness problems, they're going to just end up in jail. And you're going to keep arresting them over and over and over again. And I actually got a call from Governor Rendell's office. I got a call from the Republican mayor of my community's office. all saying, no, we've dealt with those people. But with the folks that I was talking to on the ground, they're saying, no, most of the homeless population have mental health issues, and they got booted.
Yeah, and even now, that's the case now, particularly with drug offenses. Many of the individuals who end up being arrested are addicted to substance abuse, addicted. They don't really primarily need law enforcement. They need a treatment program.
Right. Yeah,
Half of the folks in our jail system in Pennsylvania are nonviolent offenders.
And that seems really stupid to me, that you would lock these people up for use. Look, I've always been a believer. You want to kill yourself with that garbage? Go ahead. I have a fairly libertarian view. I believe in decriminalization, not legalization, because I don't want it, on the impulse aisle next to the Tic Tacs. But someone's life shouldn't be ruined because they've done these couple of things.
And that's right. And the solution for many of these individuals is not arrest. The solution is treatment.
Right. So last question I've got, going back to Senate Bill 611. What do you want folks to do? I mean, obviously, it's going to be a heavy lift. What should people be doing?
So I'm working closely with the District Attorneys Association to try to modify the legislation in a way that they can support. I think there's a good chance of that, which will still preserve the core feature of independence of the investigation. I would encourage folks to contact their Harrisburg politician. If your Harrisburg politician is a Democrat or a Republican, please contact your Harrisburg politician and ask them to support independent investigations of police-involved killings. Rick, I'm going to Sellers Grove tomorrow and Wilkes-Barre tomorrow, going around the state trying to encourage the protesters to use their energy toward passing legislation.
Good stuff. I wish you the best, Art, and as always, I appreciate you coming on and sharing what you guys are doing and keeping us up to date on what's going on there in the Capitol.
Thank you, Rick. Take care now.
Good stuff.
Hey, happy Father's Day, too, and happy Juneteenth.
Back, brother. Thanks, Pennsylvania State Senator Art Haywood. Again, call your state senator, call your representative, say we need to 11. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to the Rick Smith.
Remembering that united we bargain. Rick Smith.
$19.52. That was the day that an historic meeting took place at the White House. Black labor leader A. Philip Randolph, along with the head of the NAACP, sat down to talk with President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. The topic of the meeting was ending discrimination against black workers in war industries. Although the U.S. had not yet entered World War II, factories had ramped up production in support of the Allied forces. That year, U.S. factories shipped out nearly 5.5 billion tons of weapons, artillery, planes, and ships. Yet black workers found themselves shut out of many of these production jobs. Only 204 of more than 100,000 of those who manufactured airplanes were black. Black workers were blocked from 250,000 jobs. Determined to break this color barrier, Randolph began to organize a march on Washington, D.C. The plan was to demand war industry integration. President Roosevelt was eager to avoid the threatened march. He knew that the event would undercut the idea of the United States as a bastion of democracy. At his wife Eleanor's urging, he decided to meet with Randolph. Randolph refused to call off the march unless the president had ordered an end to hiring discrimination. Randolph refused to call off the march unless the president ordered an end to the hiring discrimination. In his call to march on Washington, Randolph had declared, "Nothing counts but pressure." He kept up the pressure, insisting to be allowed to read the draft of the president's executive order. Only when it was edited to Randolph's satisfaction did he call off the demonstration. The result was Presidential Executive Order 8802. It declared, "There shall be no discrimination in employment of workers in the defense industries or government because of race, creed, color, or national origin."
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
In talking with Senator Haywood, the reality is we've over-policed high poverty areas. That's the reality. And the argument goes, and I've had this discussion 1,000 times, so it's not new. That's where the crime is. It's where poor people go, and that's where they are. And, like Art said, they took away the general assistance money, the $200 a month that they were giving poor people to buy food and things that they need. It's got to come from somewhere. So they do something stupid by going to the local whatever store and stealing 3 peppermint patties. And as the guy who got caught with the 3 peppermint patties spent over 500 days in jail because he had a mental health problem, because we have nowhere to put him. And you look at what's gone on and our priorities. Look, it's been very profitable to lock people up. That's no secret. We've privatized our prisons. I foresee privatization of police forces at some point when they can figure out how to make it more profitable. And it all comes down to the money. Instead of looking at policing as one of those things that you need for society and not having to justify everything that a policeman does every second of the day. We've all heard that, if they're out there doing traffic duty, they got a quota because you got to make that day worth the dollars and cents. That's not what policing was supposed to be. There was supposed to be a cop on the beat, to make sure everything goes fairly reasonable. And if they let some stuff go, you let that go. You see a kid smoking pot somewhere, just put it out and go away. Now they lock everybody up. There's zero tolerance. And you wonder why you have this kind of relationship in high poverty areas. Now, my fear becomes that kind of over-policing and the militarization of our police department just turns into the military overseeing us. And one of the more disturbing stories I came across today over at the Washington Post was about evidently the Air National Guard. Evidently, they were using one of the spy planes to watch protesters in Washington, D.C. They put up one of the Air National Guard's RC-26 aircraft. Evidently, the top brass was able to watch in real time on 4K video on their cell phones everything going on the ground in full motion video. And there was a bunch of stuff that went on that when they called out the National Guard, these are military. These aren't police. Their job is to blow things up, kill people, and break stuff. They're not there for democracy. And there are some who are now really concerned at the use of our military. In fact, you now have the Air Force Inspector General investigating the use of this spy plane. And look, we had more than 5,000 National Guard members in the Capitol. We had, a couple of really disturbing incidents with I guess on June 2nd, the National Guard helicopters were harassing the crowds of protesters. And you go, there's a reason that we have a divide and we don't use military personnel on our own people. There's kind of a reason for that. And the question that I'd like to throw out is there anybody comfortable with our military spying on people who are peacefully protesting? Are you okay with the military spying on people on American soil, on American citizens, on American soil? I know, the terrorist crowd, we're going to go get those terrorists. But none of these people were terrorists. These were American citizens protesting their government, seeking redress for grievances. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. We're going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. Listen to the Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
The chief cultural emblem of our times is this: wearing a mask or not. These low-tech, high-impact coverings are so simple and effective at helping reduce the COVID-19 infection rate that our top political leaders' failure to produce, distribute, and require them en masse when the pandemic first spread ranks somewhere between stupid and criminal. But while our leaders failed, the people themselves have led, rapidly turning homemade mask making into a booming cottage industry and a charitable act. Meanwhile, though, big corporations rushed out like mass thieves to exploit the crisis. Even as their lobbyists shoved to the front of the line to grab billions in public relief funds meant for small Main Street businesses, they churned out touchy-feely PR campaigns portraying Amazon warehouses, hefty trash bags, McDonald's fries, and Walmart's forced-to-work clerks as the epitome of all-in-this-together Americanism. Their message in this global pandemic is that what unites us as a people is crass commercialism, so buy something from us. Then there are the billionaire-funded right-wing political fronts that are staging protests against masks. Yes, the Koch brothers network and other laissez-faire extremists are intentionally trying to divide Americans in this time of national crisis by demonizing mask wearing. Confusing patriotism with nutballism, some self-proclaimed Patrick Henrys now feel entitled to trample on America's common good and freely breathe their COVID infections into our public air, often while mocking and even assaulting retail employees, bus drivers, and others who are just trying to get everyone to live and let live. This is Jim Hightower saying, in this strange time, the modest mask has become a complex social symbol of competing acts of generosity, greed, and goofiness. The good news is that generosity is prevailing over the other two.
To get more of Jim Hightower's populist take on what Wall Street and Washington are up to, visit www.hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the big arena there in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that is going to host the big Trump Corona Fest. Evidently, they have continually asked the Trump campaign for their plan on how they're going to keep people safe. Because look, you put 19,000 people in an arena. It only takes a handful of people to get 19,000 people sick. They're saying, hey, how do we ensure that our citizens don't get sick and that we as the arena don't ultimately get sued? Understand, I think you have to sign a waiver before you're allowed in, so Trump's covering his behind. But evidently they've asked, and guess what? No plan. And understand, it's not surprising that there's no plan to keep the Trump supporters safe at the arena, because there's no plan to keep we the people safe in the entire freaking country. So no surprise there. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on, well, what's the matter with Oklahoma? Kansas is kind of off the hook now. I've asked our good friend Sarah Burris to come talk with us. Sarah's a fantastic reporter over at Raw Story, one of my favorite places on the dial. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us.
Aw, thank you. It's funny, I'm actually wearing my KU t-shirt today, so it's funny that we're talking about what's the matter with Oklahoma.
Dude, what's the matter with Oklahoma? I mean, I guess you guys just had the biggest day of infections that you've ever had, and still they're going to hold this damn rally?
Over 450 infections, which is the highest number we've had since the pandemic began. The second largest day was yesterday with over 280 infections. So we're having a hell of a week. We're starting to call it Oklahoma's. Because we're all going to die.
Yeah, but the good thing is Oklahoma's right there, a notch in the Bible Belt, and Jesus is going to keep everybody safe.
Well, it depends on if you believe in white Jesus or not white Jesus, because I hear that, white Jesus isn't real. So, lots of racism in Oklahoma. And I just can't believe that we're having a 20,000 person rally with an overflow crowd. This isn't just in the BOK Center. Now they're doing the convention center next door so that they can have an overflow crowd because, they got so many people. that said that they wanted to go. But I mean, oh my God, it's terrifying.
It's terrifying
so
because
terrifying.
here's the thing. Here's my problem with this. And I've had this conversation. You know, I would be okay if all of those people went and they all got the virus because they're being stupid and they deserve it. And then they went off and they all got sick and they all died. I would not be adverse to that because they consciously made a choice to put themselves in that moment. I do know that a lot of them are mouth-breathing knuckle draggers who will not wear a mask, and they are going to probably be less than 6 feet from me at the local Lowe's or supermarket or somewhere where I'm going to end up getting sick because they're complete morons. That's my problem.
All of us are gonna get killed because of it. I mean, it's gonna end up being a matter of the only way to protect yourself is you have to wear a mask because these idiots are not. And they're all going to get COVID. And the thing that just breaks my heart is that they're going to then give it to elderly family members and people like that. It's, you know, for workers and for people who, you know, leave the house, if we can just keep the mask on, they say that, you know, what is it, like 78% of COVID cases can be prevented by wearing the damn mask over your nose and your mouth. And that I actually heard an epidemiologist on NPR Wednesday talking about how they're not as concerned about surfaces as they used to be, that it really is more about air droplets and breathing those in. So, I mean, I leave the house and get some coffee on Wednesdays and then take myself for a drive for about an hour. And sometimes I do that on Saturdays too. And that has been my life for many, many months now. And I kind of got excited for a minute. I thought, oh, well, maybe like I can go to Target someday again, or, you know, like we can go to dinner somewhere.
Yeah.
And then this happens. And it's like, I'm really never getting out of here. Like, this is never, I'm going to have to like go to another country to be safe again.
Not good. Not good. Now you've got Dr. Fauci who says he's concerned with the anti-science problem that we have in the country. And you know, I look at his statement on this and I go, you know, back to the mask thing. And you pointed it out over your nose too. You know, someone sent me a meme yesterday that said, you know, wearing a mask, you know, nothing says you care like wearing a mask. And also nothing says you failed high school science like wearing it under your nose.
Yes.
So, you know, there's no point in wearing the mask on your chin, not helping.
Not helping, not even helping a little bit. And not even just like under the, you know, pulling it down under the chin, like people who wear it down here. There's a really great video. If you look at the NIH Twitter account, they have a really great visualization where they slowed everything down and showed the breath that people let out and the difference between wearing like a bandana versus a mask, wearing your mask only covering your mouth and not your nose. And then your mouth, you know, covering everything. And it really shows the difference between how far your breath goes. And each breath that you take has those little droplets in it, as many people who sit across the table from, you know, older folks sometimes experience. So it really is kind of one of those things where you have to protect other people. And if you don't, then you're responsible for somebody dying. And that's not cool.
Yeah. Well,
don't be an ass.
But again, it's again, in this country, it's always the least informed, least active, least educated. It's them. Can't we get rid of them?
It's really sad. And, you know, I'm worried now that, like, it's not just Oklahoma that's seeing an increase in cases. Look at Florida. Florida had like 3,000 new cases today, which I get. Like, they're a much, much bigger state than we are, so that's fine. But Massachusetts, which is also a large population of people, had fewer cases than Oklahoma did. And that is just like, that's the difference between opening and not opening. And actually taking the numbers seriously and not. And look at Arkansas. Arkansas is right next door to us. So a lot of those people are going to come over here with they're one of the top spikes in the country. And a lot of those people are going to come over to Tulsa for the rally. People from Texas are going to drive up. People from Oklahoma is not a very large state in terms of distance. So, a drive from Texas to Tulsa is going to be like 6 hours. So people are going to drive up from Texas. People are coming in from Wichita. Like, there are people from all over the central U.S. that are coming to this stupid ass rally. And if they don't give us COVID, there's now a chance that we're going to give them COVID. And they're going to take it back to their state.
Yep.
Yeah. And so, it's like you said, like, I hate the idea that we're going to kill people, but we may very well kill people.
Sad stuff. But again, not surprising with the person we have in the White House. Let's move on. Today, I woke up to nothing but John Bolton. I woke up to Trump's Twitter tantrum. As I said, at the beginning, I think today is the first day in 5 years that Obama hasn't occupied all the space between Trump's ears. Today, it was clearly John Bolton. And look, the reality is Bolton, I believe, told the truth. I think he's a horrible, horrible human being. I want him nowhere near the halls of power, but he told the truth. He should have done it under oath, but here we are.
Yeah, I'm super pissed that he refused to do it under oath. And in the Martha Raddatz interview that's going to be on Sunday, he talks about how he felt like the House investigation was too politicized, but then he was so annoyed with the way that Democrats were running it and saying that their scope was way too limited. And it's like, well, so you're pissed at the way that the House ran the investigation because it was too limited, but then you wouldn't come to speak because you said it was too politicized. So it's so in conflict with each other. There's
right.
really just no excuse for what he did. And it's weird because I want to read the book and I want to be able to write about it, but I'm not doing it. I'm not giving him a dime.
I'm not buying it either.
And
no, what I'm hoping happens.
Everybody reads stories about it and shares all the stories about it, and then somebody puts it on the internet.
I'm hoping.
And then we don't have
I'm hoping that Friday, the Trump administration gets their injunction. He doesn't get to release it, and it's already out. The New York Times has it, and it gets underground, sent out. It gets put on the internet. Everybody can then read it, and he doesn't make a freaking dime on it.
That wouldn't be bad. Already he has a bunch of people that have bought it online and it's going to deliver it to their Kindles and whatnot. So he's already on the bestseller list for it. So he'll make some money off of it, but I just don't want it to be, I hate the idea that this idiot is going to make millions of dollars off of being, this sketchy character in the show that is Donald Trump's presidency. And it's just unpatriotic. I think a couple of senators said it right.
Yeah.
It's unpatriotic what he did. And, that's not the way it works in the American government. If somebody does something illegal, then you report it.
Right. That's how it's supposed to work. But this is the Trump era where everything is for a price. Everything, it's all about, and I said the day he was inaugurated, it's going to be all about the kleptocracy. How much can they steal? How much can they rob and pillage? And this is just a small part of that.
Yeah. And now John Bolton is just basically forking everything over and helping, and I think helping Trump do it now. He's an accomplice in it.
Yeah. Now, obviously Bolton not happy with either side of the aisle. And on the Democratic side, I when the impeachment was going on, I was questioning, why didn't they subpoena him?
Yeah.
Why didn't they go turn over every stone to get him and Rudy Giuliani on the stand?
Yep, they absolutely should have. And I think the reason they didn't is they didn't want to draw it out. They wanted to have the impeachment done and over with, and they wanted it quickly. And I get that. I just don't. I would much rather have had them do it right than do it fast.
Me too.
And
because now it's in the rearview mirror. You were never gonna convict him in the Senate. So do it the right way. And look, to Bolton's point about being very narrow, I was saying the same thing. Why are we only this? There's so many crimes. There's the entire Mueller report, for the love of Pete.
And now we're finding out that not only was he bribing Ukraine, we've got Turkey, we've got China. I mean, he was trying to make a deal with China that he would do something for them if they do something for him. And it's just like, oh my God, how are we not? I mean, if he wins again and we win the Senate, we need to impeach his ass again for all of this stuff. I really hope that he doesn't, but
No, I'm right there with you.
Do that.
Now, I brought up Giuliani there a second ago. Did I hear this right? That something about Giuliani wanting to pull off Bolton's mustache or something? Did I get this right?
Yes. So Giuliani, I guess, started calling reporters again. He's kind of been on the hiding, I guess, or on the DL. And he started saying, I don't know what I want to do to Bolton. I wouldn't like get into a fight with him, but I'd like to pull his mustache off. And I was like, oh, Rudy, there are so many other things that we would all like to do to you. If only he had a mustache to pull off.
There you go. Now, I'm not against the idea of ripping the Bolton mustache off, because there's nothing that's more offensive than that chia pet. But
what's funny about the Rudy thing is he was more pissed that Bolton didn't call him and talk to him about his complaints about the Ukraine deal,
right.
The Ukraine bribery scandal. He's more pissed about that than he is about everything else. And it's like, oh, Rudy, this is so not about you.
Yeah, well, Bolton said from the beginning he didn't want to be part of that drug deal, and now we found out why. Also, out of the talking about the impeachment, I understand that Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman is up for promotion, and there's talk that Trump may block that promotion. Are you hearing anything on that?
There is a concern that he might block it. So every year, everybody's promotions, it's basically a track that every person in the military follows to get their promotions. And I don't think it's necessarily based on, you have to be like being a rock star and all of that stuff. I think it really is more like do your job, keep doing your job, do your job well, and you advance up. So he's a lieutenant colonel. He's up for colonel this year, along with like a whole bunch of other people. And that list got sent to the personnel office for at the Pentagon, and it's basically in the hands of the Pentagon. And there's a chance that Trump could intervene. It would not be surprising, I think, if he just decided that he still was sucking on some sour grapes and wanted to punish Vindman again. If he does, that will be unprecedented. No president has ever done that.
Oh, I fully expect him to do it. He's that petulant.
He definitely is. I think if he does it, it's just another example of him attacking the military in a way that I'm just like, how do you people still vote for him? Because it's his lack of respect for veterans, for the troops, I mean, all of these people. And I'm just like, how the hell are you people still supporting him? But they do.
Yeah, it's strange. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're here with Sarah Burris, reporter for Raw Story. You can check out their website, rawstory.com. We'll get links out on social media. I'm sure you saw the tweet that Donald Trump, because he's been taking a beating on the Supreme Court, his Supreme Court. The tweet, though, that he sent out was, do you get the impression that the Supreme Court doesn't like me? Yeah, I go ahead. You can say it.
It's all about him. Bless his heart.
There it was. Bless his heart. No, I mean, I had to say, do you not get the fact that none of us like you? Was my first response.
Which was trending on Twitter. No one likes you. That was actually trending. That phrase was trending on Twitter because so many people were responding to his tweet to tell them how much they don't like him. And I just, that really did my heart some good.
Maybe a moment the country needed.
I think it's something we can all come together on.
I said on Inauguration Day, I think he's going to be the great uniter. I think he will be the person who unites the country. Sadly for him, it's going to be against him. And if you look at the Fox News poll that's out, Biden 50-38.
I wonder. So you remember he threatened to sue CNN when they said that they put out that poll saying he was 14 points down. Their margin of error was 4%. So the Fox News poll is in keeping with that exact same number, and so was Rasmussen, not the Rasmussen company, but actually the guy Rasmussen who left the polling firm a long time ago. He did a poll of his own from his new company, and it showed the same thing, also within that 4% margin of error. And I just wonder when Fox News is going to get the threat to sue. And it's just like, this is just one bad thing after another. He is having the worst week, and it's funny. It's like, how many of these like really, really bad weeks does he have?
Yeah.
Because there have been a lot, and a lot of bad things happened to Barack Obama, but it was not. I mean, it's just one bad, poop storm after another.
Yeah, he's getting hit with one
guy.
haymaker after another, and look, and
it's all his own making.
Exactly.
That's the thing.
Is he tired of winning yet?
Right? Like, that's the question you want to ask. You're like, how's that winning working out for you? And there was a good story. God, I can't remember who wrote it, but there was a story. I think Maggie Haberman was talking about how that he really personally feels like the protesters are protesting him. Like, it's all about, them attacking him, and it has nothing to do with policing and police brutality and racism and like all of these really important things that have absolutely nothing to do with Donald Trump. This is like a systematic thing that we've been dealing with for hundreds of years. But again, like, this goes back to the same thing he said about the Supreme Court. Like, it really is all about him.
And people wearing masks. I mean, he said that as well. The people who are wearing masks, they're only doing it as a protest against him, or because they don't like him. It's nuts.
Yeah. And it's just ridiculous. It's like, good God, like, how far up your own ass are you? So,
No. But I thought Nancy Pelosi had the right. I thought Pelosi had the right take on Trump's "nobody likes me" thing. Because ultimately it comes back to the Constitution. He's done wrong. I mean, the DACA decision today was very clear. You could do it. You just screwed it up.
Yeah, he totally screwed it up, and I wonder if that was intentional. Honestly, I wonder if Jeff Sessions did that intentionally because he knew that there was no way that it would be upheld by the Supreme Court. And so, I mean, maybe that's what happened. That's a gift to the Republicans, because the Republicans don't have to then go through and pass an emergency bill that pisses off their base. And now they can just be like, oh, well, we're good. We're good on DACA. At least until Trump figures out that he can basically unmake it with an executive order.
Right.
Which, why didn't he? Like, how stupid are you?
I have no idea.
He unmade everything else.
Do you really need to ask the question, how stupid are you?
Fair point. But it's just one of those things. Like, I wonder if this is an intentional move by Jeff Sessions because he knew that it was a mistake to do it and then it would hurt the Republican Party, and so he just kind of like, I'll take care of this, and he screwed it up intentionally.
I don't know that I would be surprised, but I don't know. I mean, I'm going to need to think about that for a bit.
I know that's hard to think because Jeff Sessions is still kind of a racist ass. So,
because we are talking about Jeff Sessions after all,
right? But he puts party before country, and Trump puts himself before party, and then puts party before country. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's nuts. I wanted to get your thoughts on today's decision by Facebook to pull the ad from the Trump campaign with the inverted red triangle. I saw a bunch of things on Twitter today of potential Trump. Did you see the one with the 4 T's that made the swastika? I'm going, that can't be real. But evidently a lot of Nazi propaganda popping up in this administration.
Yeah, and more often than not, it just seems to happen so frequently that at some point you're like, this is not a mistake, stop. Or there's no way that some fool is so dumb that they're Googling, a way to, a graphic of a communist or something, and that pops up and that they don't know what that is. Like no website would have that without any kind of explainer on like what the hell, it's a red triangle is what it was. But yeah, I just feel like the thing that kills me is that Facebook let this sit on Facebook before, like with 1 million people or more who saw it.
Right.
It was out of the Trump, verified Trump Facebook, the Mike Pence verified account, and the Team Trump account. They had it running on 3 different pages, 2 of which are verified. It passed through their censors. And I just am like, why? Why Facebook?
Well, I would argue because
people.
I would argue because the mass of people don't know what the triangle is. We're so historically ignorant that it's just a triangle. It could be like on a superhero's shirt.
Fair.
It's
fair. That's a fair point. The only people that really would know that would be people who are who watch the History Channel, and people who paid attention in history class, and white supremacists. So, I just wonder how often this is happening, because I don't know all of these symbols either. I'm sure that there are a ton of white supremacist symbols that are not, World War II related, that are flying under the radar. And especially there are probably a whole bunch of ads that they're running to a much smaller population of people. I think one of the major reasons that this one was called out is because it was being shown to, hundreds of thousands of people. A lot of people saw this ad from 3 different accounts. And so I think that there are probably some sketchier things that are going on that nobody even knows about.
Yeah, well, there are most certainly sketchy things going on in this administration that nobody knows about, which is why I don't envy the next administration having to clean up all of this mess. And I'm hoping for a pit bull of an attorney general to go back and hold these people accountable so we can have perp walks from January 2021, well, till the end of time.
From your lips to Jesus's ears.
White Jesus?
Black Jesus. Middle Eastern Jesus.
Middle Eastern Jesus. There you go. And finally, you got a story out about our good senator here in Pennsylvania, the former Club for Growth president, Pat Toomey, who evidently was unhappy with Democrats claiming that, they're bailing out corporations but not working people.
Oh, it's so funny because, Pat Toomey had the opportunity to stand up and do something. And now I just feel like he's such a whiner, and he's trying to kind of straddle both lines on a lot of stuff. And, anytime anybody's like, oh, we need to pass a lot of the Democrats are saying we need another stimulus, we need something else. And, it's all Pat Toomey cares about is major corporations. It's not even small businesses he cares about. And one of the other stories I wrote today was that they're expecting a flood of bankruptcies this year. There were 6,800 bankruptcies last year. And we're talking about serious major corporations, oil companies, gas companies, J. Crew, Hertz, like all of these hospitality industries. We're talking about a huge number of jobs from corporations that are going to file for bankruptcy. And if they're filing for bankruptcy, imagine what the small businesses are having to deal with.
And imagine what families are going to have to deal with. I mean, we haven't hit the foreclosures yet or the evictions for people falling behind on rent. I mean, we're heading towards a tsunami of trouble, and this administration has done nothing to this point. I would argue they've done nothing on purpose so that there is mass chaos.
Well, it's not even just that. Like Mike Pence wrote this article, this op-ed in Wall Street Journal saying we're not even having an increase in COVID cases. We're not in a second wave, he said. It's like, well, arguably, we pretty much haven't finished the first wave.
Right.
So, I mean, they're not even saying that COVID is a serious threat anymore. And we're talking about a serious economic problem that is on the horizon. And it's going to take down a lot of jobs. And with those jobs come mortgages and, rents and families. And it's going to get bad for the election. And I'm really worried about it.
Yeah, I am too. So is there any talk of possibly another CARES Act to help with some of those bankruptcies? Or is this problem just going to be so big that there's virtually nothing we can do except, as Pat Toomey has said in the past about the 2008 collapse, that he would have liked to have seen a much harder down, more job losses, more foreclosures, more misery, more pain, so that we could have a real recovery.
Oh, whatever. There are a couple of bills that the Democrats have been working on that specifically target another stimulus check for us. I think it was going to be $2,000, and more help for smaller businesses. So I just hope that, I don't know if Republicans are going to figure it out, but like we're getting really close to, we're going to have the break for the 4th of July. Then we're going to go into the Labor Day break, and then there's going to be the election break.
Yeah.
So if they're going to do something, they better do it fast.
They better do it fast. And look, if $1,200 lasts 10 weeks, according to Steve Mnuchin, how much, I guess, $2,000 should last through the end of the year, right?
It's absurd. It's so absurd.
Literally absurd. Sarah, as always, I appreciate you taking time for us. Keep up the great work. I look forward to having you back in next week.
Thanks. I'm sorry it wasn't brighter.
Next time. Our good friend Sarah Burris. Make sure you check out her work over at Raw Story. Great stuff. We'll take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show for working people.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
A major wildfire continues to burn just north of the valley. So far, it has scorched more than 89,000 acres.
2020 wildfire season lights up with an ominous start.
All 85 felony counts were read at length, including the names of those killed because of the campfire.
California utility PG&E pleads guilty to manslaughter. We can hit 90% renewable electricity by 2035 and save money. Plus,
this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity.
New Jersey governor vows to make state the nation's offshore wind industry hub.
All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
As we restart from the pandemic, I do not want to see our state simply get back to where we were before COVID-19.
I hear you, Governor. I've been to New Jersey. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, totally unfair New Jersey slam. I love New Jersey. I've spent a lot of time in New Jersey. I've gone camping and canoeing many times in New Jersey. It's beautiful. It is not a toilet at all. What sort of stories do you have for us today?
Well, first up, the 2020 fire season is off to an ominous start. In Arizona, the wind-driven bushfire in the Tonto National Forest northeast of Phoenix has explosively grown to more than 100 square miles. As we go to air, it is the 7th largest fire in the state's history. Evacuations have been complicated by a surge in coronavirus infections in the state, straining emergency response capacity. About 2,000 people, it looks like, have been forced to evacuate.
So it's an issue in these shelters if they set them up, how they're going to social distance. And this is Arizona, where the COVID crisis is blowing up.
Indeed. In California, the National Interagency Fire Center is forecasting above average danger for the state after its mountain snowpack melted a month early. Fires have killed hundreds of people in California just since 2017. This week, bankrupt utility giant PG&E pleaded guilty to 84 counts of involuntary manslaughter and an 85th count of illegally causing a fire for its role in igniting the devastating Camp Fire. that obliterated the town of Paradise, California in November 2018, the deadliest fire in state history. PG&E admitted in court that the fire was caused by its failure to maintain its equipment in what Bloomberg News calls the deadliest corporate crime in U.S. history.
Has anyone gone to jail yet?
No.
Will anybody go to jail?
No.
If I committed 85 counts of manslaughter, do you suppose I would go to jail?
Yes.
Man, corporate personhood is nice, ain't it?
But some good news, the U.S. Senate this week passed legislation to finally permanently fund the Land and Water Conservation Fund, one of the nation's oldest conservation programs. The House is expected to pass it as well. The bill provides crucial federal funding to protect land from development and preserve natural and cultural resources, along with billions to address maintenance backlogs in the national park system. Democratic Senator John Tester, who led the effort to secure permanent funding, was ecstatic.
So we can have the best conservation tool available to the great state of Montana, which is the Land and Water Conservation Fund, and make some serious investments in Yellowstone and Glacier and other national parks around this country. This is a great day. Tally ho.
Well, it is a great day, but how did Republicans accidentally let that pass through the Senate?
Because it helps vulnerable Republicans who are up for re-election.
Oh, I see. They need all the help they can get at this point, I guess.
And yes, it is a big deal that the funding is finally permanent. However, it comes from offshore drilling revenues, which could create a perverse incentive to maintain offshore drilling as the nation shifts away from fossil fuels.
Ah, every Republican has a big butt.
A new study finds that the U.S. can reach 90% renewable electricity by 2035, just 15 years from now. Researchers at UC Berkeley found that a nationwide push to transition to carbon-free electricity would create hundreds of thousands of jobs each year because it would require upgrading the entire system, building lots of new wind and solar projects, new transmission lines and grid capacity, and electrifying buildings and transportation. And they found it would cost less than our current system. And bonus, would prevent as many as 85,000 deaths from air pollution.
Now, if we could just fund it by profits from oil pipelines, I'm sure the Republicans will be all in favor.
And New Jersey this week unveiled a huge plan for renewable energy. On Wednesday, Democratic Governor Phil Murphy unveiled a $300 million proposal to help New Jersey's long-term economic recovery by creating the nation's first offshore wind industry hub.
Eventually, the wind port will house multiple factories, creating thousands of jobs, where the parts for offshore wind turbines will be built, as well as the staging areas to move them directly from the port to the offshore wind farms that are going to rise not just off our coastline, but up and down the Atlantic seaboard.
Very cool. Once again, my apologies to the people of New Jersey. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So yesterday we spoke with Cece Battle, the director of Young People for. They're a project of People for the American Way. In getting young people activated, getting them motivated, getting them to figure out how to take issues and connect them to local offices and to the right offices. And as Cece pointed out yesterday during the program, she said, nobody really cared what the local, mayor's office was doing or about the local property tax until they found out that the local mayor set the property tax rates, which had to do with the tuition that they were paying for dorms. Then the light bulb went on that this guy's pretty important. This is where civic education and, voter education is so important, especially for the next generation. So the question then came up is, how do we change the future? What will young people do who are now taking up the mantle and moving things forward? And as the show concluded yesterday, a friend of the show reached out to me and said, hey, his daughter wanted to come on because she's one of these people, engaged, activated, passionate, She wanted to come on and share some thoughts about, where the younger generation wants to take the country. That's why I've asked Lee Eastman to come and talk with us. Lee, thanks for taking time for us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
So, like I said, yesterday we had Cece Battle on the program talking about, what's the next generation? What's the what? What's the future going to look like? What is it your generation's looking to do?
Well, I hope it's bright, because what we're going through right now is it's unacceptable. You should not have to live through this and be okay with it.
And this being, obviously people in the streets, lifetime student loan debt, less opportunity of jobs, and so on, right?
Yeah, all of it. It's just, with Trump being in office and not wanting to fix these things, it's disgusting. It's not okay.
And I think that should be the message that goes out of this. What we're seeing is not okay. What's going on is not okay, and we need to address it. And look, the reality is the economy's tanked. The reality is there's chaos in our streets. Our government's a shambles, and it's not okay.
It's really not, because being the young generation that I am in right now, you should not have to even think about twice, like, how bad it is that the student debt is this bad, and just the civil liberties. It's not okay.
Right. So
you shouldn't have to live through this time.
And look, every generation, they have their crosses. We're at a very interesting time here. I've been saying that maybe we're looking at, this generation as potentially the next greatest generation because of all of the challenges that we face. So the question is, when you look to the future, when you look down the road, what do you see? What vision are you pursuing? What's the end goal? Do you think?
Well, I think the end goal is pretty much just happiness, just trying to live life and not worry about that kind of crap.
Right. Life, liberty,
right,
the pursuit of happiness.
Exactly. Yeah. And the way it's going right now, it's not looking really good at all.
But here's the thing. I mean, when I was younger, most of my friends weren't politically active. Most of them were, we're going to go party, we're going to go chase, boys or girls or whatever it is you were doing. They wanted to live their lives. We're in a moment now where this generation of 19, 20, 25-year-olds, they don't have that luxury. We need them to be politically active. We need that passion.
Agreed. I agree 100%. And yeah, I've tried to talk to my friends all about that kind of crap, but it's different, I guess. They don't agree. I don't know if you would say they don't agree, but they are not as politically active as they should be.
Well, I think it's the ambivalence of youth.
I think that's the problem with this generation is they don't. Yeah, they're not politically active.
Isn't that the knock against every generation at the age that we're talking about? I mean, going back is, my lifetime, that's certainly been the knock against the young voter is, they've got other priorities.
Yeah, but it's really critical right now because things like if you don't change your mindset, it's not going to change. Nothing's going to change. And that's what we need right now. We need a lot of change.
Yeah. But what do you say to the person, Lee, who says, it's just so much. It's overwhelming. I mean, you look at the fact that, climate change is about to, they're talking about dooming the planet. You look at the racism and the police brutality that, people are out in the streets marching against. You look at the national debt that's just skyrocketing. You look at the unemployment numbers that are going through the student loan debt.
You got to look at the people and say, wake up. That's pretty much all it is wake up or you're going to suffer for the next 50 years of your life, you know? Like, you can't let this go on for that long.
Right.
Because it's getting to a point where it's just messed up. Things are not right.
Right. So you personally, I understand you went to vote, you volunteered with the local party, and they made you a delegate.
Yeah, I'm a delegate for Bernie. Yep.
And this is the kind of stuff that I think the young people need to hear, that you can get involved, and ultimately, what I've said for the longest time, you can take over.
Yeah, it's not that hard. Like, you just got to go down to your local DMV and frickin' apply yourself. I mean, that's all it takes.
Register to vote and then participate. It's like when I was a kid, they said, 90% of everything is just showing up.
Uh-huh.
Anything you're going to do, you just got to show up first.
That's all it takes is just frickin' show up, and things will fix itself. But you got to frickin' apply yourself before anything else happens.
Yeah, will they fix themselves though? I mean, ultimately, don't you have to have a vision, a plan, a thought? And the reason I throw this out there is, I look at someone like Joe Biden, who, he's kind of the old guy. He's the establishment. He's been in place for a long time. And, my conversation with Ms. Battle yesterday is, look, the younger generation's distrustful of the establishment. Do you find that to be true?
No, honestly, I don't. I would say people need to apply themselves some more, but I don't think it's not failed. No. I think after everybody just wakes up, they'll be able to fix it. Well, not fix it completely, but at least fix it for now, and then from there on out, you'll be able to improve things.
Well, that is the hope. The hope is that I say this occasionally. I don't know how much worse things can get. But I don't want to find out.
I know. I don't either, and that's why people need to open their eyes. And once they finally frickin' do that, I think it's gonna be a landslide up.
Well, that most certainly is the hope. Last question I've got for you. What's the advice for the younger generation?
Honestly, just wake up.
Wake up. Tell my teenage daughter that. She didn't get up till afternoon.
We can only go up from there. We can only go up from here. Wake up and we'll frickin' make things better.
There you go. We're going to put that on the bumper sticker. We're going to frickin' make things better. Good stuff. Thank you so much. I appreciate the time.
Thank you so much.
Anytime. There it is. And I think out of all of this, the reality is what we're seeing, not okay. That's the key right there. What we're seeing coming out of the administration, what we're seeing in the streets, just not okay. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back to wrap things up. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1918. That was the day that the St. Paul Federation of Women Teachers, Local 28, received their charter from the American Federation of Teachers. That next February, the Minnesota Women's Union was joined by the St. Paul Federation of Men Teachers, Local 42. Organizing separate locals by gender was common at the time. It was not until 1957 that the teachers united together into one local. One of the founding members of the Women's Local was Mary McGuff. Mary had been a teacher since 1903. She was still an active participant in the union in 1946 when the Women Teachers Local 28 led the first organized teachers strike in United States history. At the time, the idea of a teachers strike was practically unheard of. In fact, strikes by public sector workers were explicitly forbidden and illegal. Despite this, 90% of the teachers voted to walk out on strike. The core issues of the strike were improving education, including a demand for smaller class sizes and improving the crumbling infrastructure of the city's public school system. The men's local joined the women on the picket line, but it was the women who organized the action. Mary McGuff was nearly 60 years old at the time. During the 6-week strike, Mary took to the radio. Her voice shared the story of the strike with the public. One striker remembered that Mary was able to cut politicians to threads, but did it in a very ladylike fashion. Finally, the strike ended in victory for the teachers. In 1969, the union established the Mary McGuff Award, which honors teachers for the advancement of education in the St. Paul schools.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So if all of the insanity and chaos that we're seeing going on isn't enough with the people in the streets, this administration just taking a brutal behind kicking at the Supreme Court, all of the narcissism coming out of Trump's mouth, oh, they don't like me. The fact is, today we saw the Labor Department report another 1.5 million people filed for unemployment benefits last week. That takes the number way up, well past 45 million people. The sad reality is this administration has done, I don't think, a very good job in making people whole. This has been, I said from the start, as a number of people we've had on, that we should have been making workers whole, not corporations. We shouldn't have had a $500 billion pot of gold for corporate America, administered by Steve Mnuchin, who's not telling us what they did with it. Sorry, that wasn't the way to go. And now you see this report coming out from the folks over at Americans for Tax Fairness and the Institute for Policy Studies. They're saying that from March 18th, they're saying right when the rough start of the pandemic through June 17th, the billionaire class of this country saw their wealth jump $584 billion, or 20%. So as families are struggling, as small businesses are probably going broke, our billionaire class, fat and happy, thank you very much. And in fact, not only did they grow in the amount of money that they pocketed, their numbers grew as well, because now we have 644 billionaires, up from just 614. So yes, we have more billionaires out of chaos. And you look at someone like Jeff Bezos, who saw his wealth just in those 3 months jump by $43 billion. Just in 1 month. Bill Gates saw his wealth jump by over 11 billion. Mark Zuckerberg saw his wealth jump by over 32 billion. Buffett went up over 4 billion, and Larry Ellison saw his jump over $10 billion. And you go, remember, we gave those folks tax cuts. So not only did they, thanks to the pandemic, pocket a boatload more money, they got to keep more of it because we did away with the estate tax. We did away with other taxes that they had to pay. And we've basically made them happier, wealthier, and richer at a time when millions of people are going to go bankrupt, millions of people are going to lose their homes. We see the tsunami of pain coming. And this administration is doing nothing to stop it, in my view. All they're doing is cheerleading us into potentially more pain and suffering. The fact that Donald Trump is moving forward with this weekend's rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma, at a time when Oklahoma is now seeing their highest number of infection cases, is just mindlessly incompetent, or just maliciously hateful. And the sad reality is people are going to run into this event. And as Sarah Burris said earlier, they're going to take whatever they pick up home with them. And this is how this thing spreads. And the response that I get from people, and this is the amazing part. They're justifying Trump having the rally. Stupidity is just remarkable to me. They're justifying that Trump supporters should be able to have the rally because there are people protesting in the streets. And I don't want the protesters to get sick either. But there is a huge difference. The people who are in the streets protesting, they're doing so because their government is doing nothing to help them. They're doing so because they believe they don't have any other options. They're doing so out of desperation. When I see these people talk about, well, I should be able to go to this rally and I shouldn't have to wear a mask and I shouldn't have to do any of this stuff. It brings out every bit of that ugly American that we hear internationally about. The chest thumper, the loud talker, the obnoxious one. And sadly, when I go to some of these places and I see people, what are you thinking? Look, I hate wearing the mask as much as anyone. I'll be honest with you about it. I hate it. But when I go into a store and I go around people, I put it on. My wife has made some really, really very colorful ones. In fact, today I donned the chocolate strawberry mask. Had strawberries would look like they were dipped in chocolate. Very nice, very, very tasteful. But I hated it. My kids hate it. But you got to do it. That's ultimately the reality. Or this gets worse. I mean, I don't think it's that hard to figure out. Or it gets worse. You go into a crowd of people, of 19,000 people in an arena, chances are somebody's got it. And I point back to that story of the woman in Florida who was actually a healthcare worker, which was the bizarre point in this, who said, her and her 15 friends went to the bar and, they did everything right. And all of them are diagnosed with the virus. And you go, I don't think you did everything right. Sorry, not buying it. Not buying it even a little bit. So the question is where do we go from here? And I guess come November, we're going to have to answer that question that Ronald Reagan threw out. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? And the answer overwhelmingly for millions of people is no. Is your future better off than it was 4 years ago? The answer is clearly no. Is our government stable? No. We have a narcissistic, vindictive leader who has all of the worst tendencies and all of the worst proclivities. And at some point, it reflects back on us. So we got a lot of work to do. And, as Lee said a moment ago, it's not okay. what we're seeing is not okay. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you missed any of today's program, you can download the podcast there at the website or get the app on your smartphone. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.